This is not going to be your warm, fluffy, recover from burnout with self-care video, okay? I started out 2023 with taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, but I'm ending the year as one of my best years ever. So we're going to talk about how I discovered my Black woman Bliss persona, the era that I'm in, and what I really did to overcome burnout and how you can too. And self-care will be a part of it, but that's not really all. So let's get into it. There's nothing like Black woman bliss, like being in nature. So here we are, authentically where I am staying in the new year to usher in what it will mean to be me in the new year. So let's get into it as we look at this beautiful landscape. Okay. Hello, I'm Mercedes and I am the Career Love Coach. Welcome to my channel. My mission is to help the 9.8 million beautiful, amazing, talented Black women who are currently in the US workforce, who are underpaid, underpromoted, and underincluded. And so that's my goal, to close that pay gap. So normally I'm on this channel talking about career goals and career objectives and how to bring your career goals to life. And that's my dog out here with me. But normally I'm talking about that type of content. But today I wanted to talk about something that is also the reason why I do what I do. And I started off this video talking about how I very much was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication at the beginning of this year. And a large portion of that was due to workplace trauma. I was severely burnt out in my role. I was in an environment that was not conducive to me having a positive work-life balance. It was impacting my self-esteem. It was impacting my mental health in general. I also discovered at that time, just due to all of those compounding impacts, that I have ADHD. So I'm one of the late diagnosed ADHDers. And we also know how a lot of mental health or disorders or neurodivergent traits show up differently in Black women. And so it has certainly been a journey. But one of the things that really helped me in the beginning of this year, or 2023, but depending on when you're watching this, is that I had to really redefine who I was and what I wanted. And I, again, created this persona called a Black woman pursuing bliss. So I'm going to tell you about the different things that I did to pursue bliss and how I'm going to continue to pursue that bliss in 2024, the lessons that I've learned, the tactics that I took, made, whatever, implemented, whatever. I just want to share that with you. So if you're here, you're a Black woman, you've been in a toxic environment, you feel like you aren't where you want to be in your career or your life, I think this video will really help you. And welcome to the Career Love community. So let's get into it. Okay, so I forgot to mention that I am going to be talking about my dopamine routine at the end of this. I'm not going to talk about right now what dopamine is, but it's a neurotransmitter and it's critical for all of our brains. But for ADHD brains, it is much more critical, and so I created a routine to help me do that. And I think it's one of the best things that we can do to help ourselves in that burnout recovery. That's not just those typical self-care, fixes everything energy. So we'll talk about that at the end, so make sure you stay around and enjoy. Okay, so the first thing that I did was kind of conduct a life audit. It's not as serious as it sounds, but it's one of those big things that are so important. If you haven't taken time to really consider, like, where am I in my life? What's going on? Why am I here? And so I had to really reflect on a lot of things because I wasn't able to really fairly consider how dissatisfied or burnt out I was without acknowledging all of the things that was going wrong and how my career was misaligned, right? And that's one of the biggest things that you can do to move yourself back into balance with who you want to be when you're pursuing this bliss, right? And leaving burnout, right? Because it means that there's something that's not in balance there. And so one of the things that I started doing is I started to assess everything in life. What did I like? What didn't I like? What was going wrong? What was going right? And I started to define what it would look like if I had more or less of those things, or what could I do to change how I was currently showing up or how I was experiencing my life in the world. I started out by really defining what my values were. It kind of sounds crazy. It doesn't mean to reevaluate your values means that you've been unethical, because people think that's what that means. And your values can change throughout your life, right? Your values aren't things that are necessarily good or bad. I mean, I guess we have values in our lives of what we feel like is important and how we want to show up and see the world, right? So, for instance, one of my big values has always been inclusion. I didn't always call it inclusion, but it was really just valuing and appreciating each person for who they are. And it was something that I was doing in my work, but I wasn't seeing it in the way that I was being treated, right? And so it was one of those things where I saw this value, like things that were happening kept bumping up to that value, and that's why I was so stressed, so burnt out, and really was feeling the trauma of a toxic workplace, right? And so again, it's those big things that when they become misaligned for us, they ultimately impact us in the workplace, right? So it doesn't just show up as, oh wow, I'm so upset that my manager treated me this way. It's what you take home with you. It's the can't turn it off. It's the how that begins to impact you internally in yourself, and how you view yourself and your self-value and your self-worth, and even your confidence level of what you think is possible for you, what can happen. And so I find that like we have these things where our values are kind of violated, and we have to take the time to really reflect and figure out, how do I have a different experience that better aligns with the values that I have for me and my career. And by considering those and kind of doing an audit of all of those things, it helps you to figure that out. I hope that makes sense. So if I'm going to talk about this life audit, yes, that's what you need to do. Figure out what's going right, figure out what's going wrong, figure out what you want different, and then figure out what your values are. And then that kind of takes you on to our next point, which is project managing your life. So when we talk about project managing our lives, right, I think a lot of times we put a lot of effort into project managing our work, project managing other people, project managing all of the other things that have to happen, but we don't take time to prioritize and project manage what we want in our lives. I also think that a big issue that we face is that we think that burnout can be fixed by an extended vacation, by more self-care. But the fact of the matter is, the reason that we got into that stage of burnout is because, again, something is in misalignment, right? So you can't just continue to see this happen, pull back on that by investing in self-care or time off when you aren't fixing the reason that you're in that cycle. So I'm going to talk to you about the examples and how I took steps to do that in different areas of my life that was causing burnout for me. So the first one was my job, right? And I told you that a big indicator of that burnout cycle for me was me feeling that level of stress at work and not having a way to fix it. So the most logical step was like, I can't fix what's going on here. I'm ready to exit. I'm ready to look for a new opportunity, right? And so I had to project manage that. I had to say, okay, what do I need to do to exit? Where am I going? How am I going to apply? When am I going to update my resume? How am I going to network? What are the things that I'm going to do to ensure that I can move on to the next level in my career, the next stage, so I can exit where I'm coming from. I also had to think about, how do I make sure that I'm not in a similar environment that I was last time, right? So how do I find an employer or a manager that better aligns with what I expect out of my career, right? So it wasn't just the tangible things of what do I do next. It was also ensuring that next thing is in alignment. I have a lot of different videos about really navigating your career, asking the right questions. So keep on keeping on going through these videos, okay, if you want to learn more about kind of leaving that toxic work environment and getting to something different in the new year. Okay, home. Probably too much information, but I had yeah, I guess a year and a half now, I had moved in with my fiance. I mean, we're still living together, but it was kind of moving in these two households. And ADHD problems, right? I don't love cleaning. And lots of things were cluttered, and that was not helpful for my brain. And so I had to really define, like, okay, how do I make this space function for me? How do I make the space function for what my fiance already has? How do we kind of bring these two lives together? And so I had to really think about what I wanted our home to look like. I don't even mean like just redecorating. I mean like just purely organization and not cluttered. Being able to keep a tidy home with limited or little investment in that time, in terms of like not making a huge monetary investment to like completely redo the house or purchase a new house or get rid of everything. Like, that's not what I mean here. So what I ultimately decided to do was declutter every single room in the house over like a 6-month period. So what I did is I created a schedule for that. I talked about those goals, what my rewards would be for that, and then over time I decluttered the entire house. I have one last room that it was already decluttered, but because things have been moving around, it needs to be gone back through because it's been a year now. But it was one of those things that having this space that didn't have so much stuff, that was more functional for how we actually lived our lives, was something that was really helpful for me. So again, I made that project plan, okay, to make it happen. Okay, so the next one is business, right? So I'm a career coach. I have a business, okay? And sometimes business part, especially when you have a full-time job and you're running your business outside of that, can, yes, be burnout even though you love what you do, right? Having all these different clients and working with each of them and making sure that each of them are satisfied can be stressful at times. There's my dog. So one of the things that I had to do was kind of understand where my time was going in my business. I was spending an awful amount of time with social media. It's not like my forte. I don't love social media. I enjoy the connection that social media brings, like helping me find clients that are my ideal, amazing, beautiful coaching clients that they are. But sometimes just the tediousness of creating all that content and posting and editing and everything else gets to me. And so I had to decide, okay, I guess it's time for me to invest in some of these things that will kind of help to optimize things. So I started to think about what systems can I use. So I invested in a couple of programs to help me repost. I invested in integrations. I invested in things that would allow me to organize my planners a lot better. So it wasn't a huge monetary investment, but it was something that if I hadn't been thinking about how to really shift this and make it change and work better for me, I would have been in the cycle, again, recreating all of these burnout cycles that were already impacting me. So, yeah. So, as I've mentioned already, there were a lot of different tactics or tools that I used to really help break that burnout cycle. And I know that sounds super counterintuitive because you're like, well, Mercedes, you're saying that you're burnt out, but you're doing all of these things. But I'm doing all of these things to counteract or break out of the that burnout cycle, right? So of course, when you're burnt out, you can't make as much or extend as much energy into these types of things. And so that's why, one, that plan matters, and also it matters for you to extend yourself grace and to be kind to yourself while you're going through this process, right? But you ultimately know that each step that you take, no matter how small, is ultimately going to help you change that cycle, right? So if it's career-wise, it could just be, I just finished a section of my resume today. And if it's home-wise, then it means, okay, wow, I cleaned out this one cabinet today. If it's business-wise, like, okay, I optimized this one process today. And that's going to be good enough for me. And so ultimately, when those things start coming together and they start working, you're going to see yourself come out of that burnout cycle. I say that with such conviction because I'm 8 months. Well, I told you 2023 is when I started, right? I'm recording this in December 2023. It's probably not going to come out until January 2023 or 2024. But that being said, after I made that career transition, it took me 8 months to get out of that burnout cycle, okay? While I was still doing these things. I feel like I've only been out of it for December of 2023. That's how real it was. I stopped my anti-depressants like 4 or 5 months, 6 months ago. I stopped it pretty quickly after I left my toxic job. But yeah, so I just want you to know that if it feels like it's a lot, it's okay. Make those small movements, stay consistent in that. Give yourself grace, right? So the more that you don't listen to yourself in that and you kind of push through that, those low points or that lack of energy, it is not going to help you, I promise. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. Okay, I talked about point number 3, which is to optimize and to make things more efficient. So again, it doesn't mean that everything has to be a system or everything has to be a process. But again, when you take the time to look at things and say this is working or not working, it's ultimately going to help you better to see how you can streamline some things in your life. So one thing that I did to optimize myself or create workflows for myself is that I actually started using Notion. So Notion, I will link to Notion below. You can get access to it. It's free up to a certain point, but you could pretty much use Notion for free forever. I do pay for it, but for a particular reason because I use it a lot of different functions. But I started using Notion to kind of help me declutter my brain. So I would put all of my, tasks, my projects, my entire calendar is in Notion now. It was just something that helped me to escape the burnout of feeling, I don't know how to explain it, but all of the different tasks, the anxiety that I was facing because I just had so much going on between my work life, my home life, and my business life. And so having somewhere where I could put it all together and see it at a bird's eye view and not get stressed that I wasn't missing or not doing or leaving something behind really allowed me to kind of optimize a lot of the things that I was doing in my career. So absolutely, I'm a Notion girly, ride or die. You can fight me if you want to. But for sure, Notion is one of the biggest things that I would recommend using if you decide to project manage your burnout cycle. Hi, baby. Okay, so number 2 for business, I already talked about some of this, but I had decided to just automate a lot of the processes that I was doing for my business. So I'm just going to list them off because I don't remember them all. So one is I automated my content, right? I have all my content being repurposed by Repurpose.io. I also have a scheduling tool called Metricool, and so that's really helped me. It kind of auto post. It can continuously repost stuff for me. So it was something that really helped me to not be so stressed about not having a presence where I needed to. 10 out of 10 has reduced. I've gotten so much time back by just not reposting content. Number 2 is analytics. So I would often feel like I didn't really know where I was with my business goals each month. And so I actually started using Zapier to move over a lot of the different analytics that I need to measure. So that's social media, leads. So for y'all who schedule a career clarity chat, y'all one of my metrics. No, just kidding. I mean, you are, but I want to see the health of my business and my marketing efforts, right? And then the types of revenue that I have coming in and the types of contacts that I have or traffic that I have on my website. So people opting into stuff like the journal or people who are just visiting my website and what pages, right? Those are all important things, right? So I was doing a lot of that manually. Now I have that automatically going into Notion so that I can measure it that way. Okay, so number 4 is really all about this bliss, right? Going from this burnout cycle to embracing bliss as a Black woman and breaking that cycle, right? So that you're not continually through that. So I told you I was talking to you mostly about those very tangible things that you can do, but now I want to talk about the mindset stuff because you can't get into a place of taking action to break the cycle if you can't kind of reframe mindset. So one of the things that I first did, I talked to you about the thought processes that I went through to get where I was. But one of the things that I had to start doing was listening to myself because I would always want to push through the cycle, right? It's I have goals, I have things to do. I need to make sure that I, follow the plan of my project management, life project management, right? That I had planned out for myself. But at the end of the day, a lot of that was counterintuitive, right? I'd push myself to do things and then I'd end up in a worse spot than I was energy-wise or motivation-wise because I wasn't listening to what my body needed, whether that was rest. And we deserve rest and we need rest. So make sure that as you're going through this to reconsider that you need to take care of yourself first. This is not just self-care, like go get your hair done, go get your nails done. I mean, go do that too, because it's helpful. Like a pedicure is part of my self-care routine. But at the end of the day, you need rest. You need rejuvenation. You need your soul and your spirit to feel just as good as your feet do. Another thing was creating those new practices, right? So I'm going to talk to you about my dopamine routine, but what are those practices that I want to put into my life and things that I want to do every day that are going to help me shift away from negativity or the toxicity, depression, anxiety, and shift me into a better state of mind? Again, I'm going to talk about that in a minute in the dopamine routine and how that kind of helped me. And then that last thing that I mentioned is looking at those workflows and that process in order to stay to allow your energy to be used in things that are manual, right? So as much as we want to optimize and help our employer do things better, we need to also do that for our lives, okay? So before I get into my dopamine routine, I wanted to share that if you're a Black woman and you are also pursuing the career-related bliss era in this conversation, right? Burnout comes from all things, but certainly it comes from our career. So if you are a Black woman who is really trying to shift out of that cycle and you also want community, accountability, and resources to help you do that, I'm going to link to my community below. It's called the Career Love Community. I've created it to be a space for Black women to come together and move forward in those things career-wise. I show up with support and help, and there's also a lot of other amazing Black women in that community for you to continue to stay plugged in. So go ahead and check that out below. So I told you that I'd say at the end what my dopamine routine is. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It has to do with pleasure, satisfaction, and motivation, and it helps us to feel those things, right? There is a known issue. I don't know. It's known that ADHD brains have less dopamine, and so it's more natural for people who have ADHD to seek out dopamine in the way that they act or they do things. Sometimes that can show up as really bad, such as impulsive spending, which doesn't mean ADHD, all people who impulsive spend are ADHD, but it's just this idea that we seek dopamine whether you have ADHD or not, and that we are making attempts to feel that dopamine in our lives, right? So instead of kind of not being intentional or maybe doing things that may not be safe or helpful to seek dopamine, or when you are really on empty, you can instead be more intentional by creating a dopamine routine. So, right, instead of saying I'm impulse spending because I'm at the bottom of my dopamine barrel, embedding those things throughout your week or throughout your day. And so that's what I've done. I will also say that, like, while it just is like, well, it's just a neurotransmitter. It's just pleasure. It's just motivation. It's just joy. Like, yes, but also dopamine is critical for helping us with other things like memory, mood, sleep, learning, concentration, movement, and other bodily functions, whatever that means. It's like, does that mean it helps us poop better? Is that what it means? I mean, I'm poop happier when I'm happier. Okay, so I told you that I had processes that I put into my life to really help make sure that I was focused, moving forward, and embedding the things that I needed to in my life with a plan, right? So I also use those same tools to create a dopamine strategy. So right now, or a dopamine routine. So what I have right now is I have reoccurring calendar invitations that I have set. One is nightly, so I have a nightly routine, which is a dopamine routine. And I talk about different things. I have a list of things in there, such as doing meditation or tapping or nightly yoga, or sometimes I'll take a bath, or I have my journaling or scripting. So I have a lot of things in there that I know kind of like fill back up my cup. And yes, those are some of the stereotypical things that people talk about when they say, like, oh, self-care, mitigating burnout. Yes, those things, but I have it on a routine so that I remember each night to dedicate 30 minutes to an hour to those types of things. I also have a dopamine check-in on Friday on my calendar. So, did I do it on Thursday or Friday? Anyway, it's on my calendar. I think it's on Friday right now. I had it on Thursday at some other point, so I had enough time to figure out if I want to do something on Friday night. But anyway, I take time to say, what is it that I want to do that's going to fill up my cup this weekend? Again, this could be different for everyone. I really love experiences. So I want to go to a show. I want to go to a movie. I want to go to a fall festival. I want to go see an art gallery. Like, I want to go do something that's different. I want to be out in nature. Okay, I want to go kayaking. Whatever that is, it doesn't mean that it's the same every time, but every single Friday or Thursday, whatever it is on my calendar, I don't know, I make sure that I spend time thinking about that. And I also ask for help with that. Like, so my fiance will help to plan out a lot of those, quite frankly, to kind of help me stay motivated in a good headspace, because I know that's what I need to thrive. It's not just about the extra, it is about what you need to function, and it's okay. That's true. And another thing is that I have been using it to manage my energy, right? So I know that on any given day, there's a certain amount of energy that I can really have reasonably for tasks, right? So I use that to kind of plan out my day. I use my calendars as well as Notion to help do that. And that way I can see everything in one place so that I can really have this routine that, one, allows me to the flexibility to move tasks around so that I can do the things that are kind of lighting me up and exciting to me. And I also have things that are more leisurely, and I also have things that are more like internal mindset things on a regular basis in my calendar. Hi, big boy. Okay, so as we close this video, I actually have a podcast episode with my mom. I do a podcast called The Chasing 100 Club with my mom. And on each episode, we talk about one of our biggest 100 goals and what we're doing to actively pursue and chase them. So our first episode on that podcast was actually talking about dopamine. So if this has been an interesting topic to you and you want to learn more about my dopamine presentation or routine that you haven't heard today, go ahead and check out my podcast below. You'll love it because me and my mom are fabulous. Whatever. Okay, well, I hope this video has really helped you to understand and see how you can pursue career bliss, business bliss, life bliss, your Black woman in bliss era, okay? So if you enjoyed this video, definitely leave me a like, leave me a comment, and let me know what you thought. And if there was anything in this video that was particularly helpful to you, I hope that as you go through this next year, that you can really see yourself in a different light. You can see yourself as the woman that you were meant to be in your Black woman bliss era, and that you can break that burnout cycle for yourself. So I can't wait to see what you do this year with a new outlook on your mindset, new outlook on life, mindset, burnout, whatever. But good luck, and I'll see you for the next video.